afternoon.
Hi, Marty.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I had the morning with my grandson, who who is managing his regulating his emotions, learning about frustration tolerance, um, impulse control, and delayed gratification. So I actually got to watch myself experience what it looks like to be nurtured instead of shamed and blamed. Feeling frustrated about having to take a shower, not wanting to, bargaining, and then given a choice, all in no shame, no blame. Recognition of feeling, and I actually watch him deal with how to present to the people around him to get what he wants. And it's an amazing process with somebody who is aware that he's in a process of learning. It's not personal. And it was my choice to go over there and be a grandfather, so he has no obligation to me whatsoever, and he gets to be himself. Yeah.
Maybe before we go any farther, would you be willing to adjust your glasses because we're getting big glare?
Yeah.
There you go. Thanks.
Yeah. Cool.
So is this
Go ahead.
is this similar to the story you shared with us about the time he was throwing the tantrum when his mom left and he ran upstairs and sat in the door of his room, and
Yeah.
you reflected back to him and acknowledged and validated his experience?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And didn't try
Yeah.
to manage his behavior for him?
Right. And was present. He is focused on whatever adult is in the room watching, playing, and I know my issue, family of origin issue, was that all the feelings that I was learning were shame, blamed, hidden. I've never seen him stuff a cry. You know what, that it has a look to it. I used to do this in the jail with the guys about not being able to cry. And a little kid will be told, what do you got to cry about? You shouldn't be crying. And they'll go, and he's never done that. He's never been in a position where he's been told not to feel or that his feelings were valid. And I just thought about that when I was talking to you, which is, wow. So, you know, when I was growing up, the thought was, well, the slogan of the day is children are to be seen and not heard. And then all the other things that go along with socializing, and then socializing to the degree of whatever dogma the parents adhere to, whether it's Catholicism or Jew or Protestant, that we need to make that little kid responsible so he doesn't grow up and be a criminal or be a malcontent or
a sinner.
And in the process guarantee some stress in that child's adult life that he won't even know where it came from, and then that adult being blamed for behaviors that he seems to be repeating that he can't stop, like hurting people he loves, regretting it, and then finding himself doing it again and again and again, as I did in my coming to awareness, and wanting to stop, wanting to be good, and this pool of subconscious stuff, trauma, active in the process of keeping me safe, not knowing that I don't need it anymore. I can take care of myself now, and I didn't have the foundation. And that the link to Ken Wilber's work is this development that incorporates the last stage of development into the current stage of development, which is expansion. And most people see expansion, I don't know about most people. The way I interpreted expansion was leaving the old behind and becoming this new enlightened light being, which isn't really the case at all.
Right. You know, I was thinking that your description of the cultural meme of children should be seen and not heard put me in mind of Alice Miller's original critique in Drama of the Gifted Child, because she was critiquing the allegedly German, I'm sure it's more than just German, notion of if you spare the rod, you spoil the child.
Yeah.
And therefore, it's appropriate to use violent means, whether emotionally or physically or both, to coerce children into preferred behaviors.
Right.
And so this is something that we've at least known here in Western culture for over half a century. Alice Miller was writing, I think, in the 40s and 50s. But I don't know how much earlier than that insight goes back. And that's why part of the challenge that we have is that we don't have a culture that's raising children the way your daughter is raising Solomon and the way you're supporting that. We're still in the trajectory of an older paradigm, an older belief system.
It goes back as far as the admonition, spare the rod, spoil the child, which I believe is in, I don't know what testament's in. Let's say it's at least 2,000, maybe 3,000 to 4,000 years old.
Right.
And it's been misinterpreted, the rod being interpreted as a stick instead of a unit of measurement. The rod was a unit of measurement. So the way I read that now, or hear it now, is if I spare my own measurement, which I call integrity, if I spare my integrity, I spoil the child. It has nothing to do with the child, it has everything to do with the adult in the room.
But you can actually, if you study Wilber's developmental model, what you discover is that there was a reason for that philosophy in tribal cultures, because the tribe had to stick together and you had to acculturate your children into being part of that cohesiveness. And if they were to wander off, they would not just endanger themselves, but they would endanger the tribe.
Right.
So that's why you see some tribes, even today, we've talked about this in earlier podcasts, like the Bushmen and the Kalahari, who adopt the process of integrating their children through compassion and teaching.
Yeah.
But it's all for the same purpose. It's to defend the tribe. It's to raise good tribesmen, so that the tribe's existence is guaranteed.
Yeah.
Now you move into this individual era that we're in, and you even said it yourself a few minutes ago, or we learn to take care of ourselves. And therefore, the way that we acculturate and raise our children should, in theory, be focused on generating self-actualizing, self-organizing, self-authoring individuals. And here's where that transcend and include mechanism that you talked about is so incomplete. We're still, I'm actually writing a paper on this right now, this rational consciousness, modern consciousness, is only 500 years old, and so it's not. It just hasn't been around long enough to teach itself the best methodologies for continuing itself. And so mistakes are made, and that's the way we learn.
Mm-hmm.
Just like Darwin said in natural selection in biology, mistakes are made, and those mistakes don't get carried forward in the gene pool.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a similar version on the psycho-spiritual side. We try stuff. If it doesn't work, it's not going to support growth. It's just going to fall away and be replaced by some other attempt to figure out what furthers the goals of the particular level of consciousness. So we're still, for all of our technology and for all of our wealth, I mean, we're clearly in the wealthiest epoch of human history right now. If wealth is measured as the means by which to create a standard of living, in spite of all that external wealth, we still have a long way to go on the internal side to create internal wealth and health that's commensurate with what we can create on the outside. It's a great time to be alive.
Yeah, and a rough time to be alive too. Yeah,
We get to be participants in that experiment. I've always seen the accountability practice as an advanced way, because it's practical, an advanced way of helping generate that more powerful future of which we're capable, where we actually have a culture of self-actualized human beings who then choose voluntarily to form societies that promote our greatest good and create political economic structures that do that.
mm-hmm.
But right now it's still an experiment. So
Yes.
we do the best we can with what we have, as human beings have always done.
I'm finding that the more I learn about myself, the more fluid my participation in my community is, and the more I impact it according to what I intend to impact it with, instead of adding to the chaos, adding to the mix, adding to the strife, and I don't know the big picture. I don't know the end result. I do know that what you and I talk about is important to me, and my grandson and my daughters, and I will continue to expand and grow and be part of the change, part of the emergence, and also a catalyst for the emergence.
I'd like to take this moment to reissue an invitation to anybody who's listening to this who wants to check this out from an experiential perspective, to check out our Rusty Nail Club meetings. We meet Monday nights and Thursday nights from 6:30 to 8:30 Pacific time. And at the end of the podcast, there'll be some ways to contact us and find out more. Because one of the things that John and I have recognized as we do our podcast is that we're talking about something that really can only be experienced. And we oftentimes talk about our own experience in this. So it's the closest technology that we have to try to convey what we know about this process or what we've experienced it. But we certainly want to find a way to offer anybody who's watching this a chance to experience it for yourself. So please feel free to get in touch with us, and we'd love to have you join us. We're using this Zoom technology, so we actually had somebody show up from Dubai a couple of weeks ago, and so we've become international, and so feel free to check it out. You can come and ask questions. You can observe people going through this process, or you can undertake it yourself.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we didn't talk about what we were going to talk about this meeting. We just started with the Zoom, and I like where it went right off the bat with an example of my grandson and my relationship with him. So
It's very powerful, and I'm glad we spent some time on that, because I think perhaps we don't speak this enough bluntly, but it's certainly my aspiration in doing this work to support creating a generation of people who raise their children the way Solomon is being raised, and to support the healing for the adults that's necessary, prerequisite for them to figure that out, that their children are not there for them to do their emotional work on, but rather their children are there for them to support becoming self-actualized human beings.
yeah, yeah, I agree.
I don't have it handy, but I think Khalil Gibran did a whole poem about children are borrowed, not owned, or children are lent by God to parents for the time they have to help fashion their capacity to be humans, and then they're to be released to have their own lives.
He uses the analogy that they're the arrow and we're the bow.
Right.
We have them, and then it's their life.
Right.
Our guidance ends. Well, actually, the truth about it, my guidance hasn't ended with my two children. They're 44 and 42. But my meddling has stopped. I sit and wait and am available to them whenever they need to talk or need support. So,
well, I was as you said that you used the bow and arrow metaphor. I was thinking about my own parents and how through my whole life I've stayed connected with them in various forms of tension or relaxation, but it never would have occurred to me not to be in a relationship, even in the most angry moments that I had with my dad or my mom.
Yeah.
It never occurred to me that I wasn't part of the family that they created and that they themselves were part of.
Yeah.
But what I've learned in the accountability process is I've learned a lot more compassion for myself and therefore for them. That all of the things that I can look back at and say occurred in my family, I have no longer any sense that anything was done deliberately, anything was done to harm me, even though I may have experienced harm. And I created a defense, psychological defense that still challenges me today. But that isn't because my parents said, oh, let's do this to Marty.
Right. Yeah.
They were just doing the best they could with their own emotional conditioning.
Right.
And I got to know many, not all of them, but most of my grandparents. They were around for first 20 years of my life, so I can look back and see them a little bit too, and what their development was like.
Yeah.
And their experience. So compassion comes when I begin to understand that other people have the same suffering and experience that I do.
Yeah.
And that my own suffering and experience is neither good nor bad. It's just what happened, and I'm now at choice about what I want going forward.
Yeah. Me too.
I was thinking I wrote down a list of things that we haven't talked about yet.
Okay.
And I'd like to just throw some out here and see what sticks to the wall, see what you'd like to talk about. And I was thinking about this way at the beginning when you were talking about Solomon, and you said something to the effect of, you're watching him figure out how to get people to do what he wants done. You said something like that? Is that
Yeah.
accurate?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And as you know, I do the talks at my church, and this is I'm going to try to make a connection here that may seem far-fetched, but one of the things that we talk about is the role of desire in creating our lives. And we talked about on this podcast a number of weeks ago or months ago about one of our principles, which is I'm always getting what I want. And I want to explore this thing about desire a little bit. And
Okay.
where does desire come from, and how do we know? Is there a distinction between authentic desires and twisted desires, or because I think desire plays a fundamental role in the development of life. I mean, we might even say life itself desires to thrive.
Mm-hmm.
And so somehow desire is intertwined with all of the basic psychodynamics of our lives. Because when we say I'm always getting what I want, that implies that wanting is always happening. So,
Yeah.
any thoughts that you'd like to share with us about the role of desire in our recovery work?
Well, I want to offer, I want it all. Uh,
See, there you go. There's your
my,
desire.
yeah. And all meaning the capacity to experience my life fully. Um, and being at the age I'm at, I have come to realize that whatever goal I set in my younger life, when achieved, um, wasn't what I thought it was going to be. It wasn't, oh, I've arrived, I've got it, I can chill out now, I can rest. It's simply another, it was a foundation for another expansive want, or I want more of this. And what I'm finding is that it's not ending. And I'm assuming that it's never ending. That's not a very, well, it hasn't ended yet, and I don't see it ever ending. And based on what I know internally, that its expansion never stops. So um, it's the it's the thing I desire that has shifted. Before my recovery, it was a pickup truck, gun rack, um, um, a modicum of isolation, and I didn't have to mess with people, and people couldn't mess with me. Um, and I got it, and it's what drove me to AA, or Adult Children of Alcoholics, anonymous meetings. And even when I asked for it, when I got into recovery, what I wanted was a moment of peace. I got that, and then I heard myself say I want to live in peace, and I have moments of that, long moments of just peace. And there's more to it. There's more that I can do and be, and it becomes this internal search. I want to say effortless, yet I'm in the friction of life. Things happen, and I have to make choices, sometimes difficult choices, um, and I want more. I have come to the philosophy that nothing happens to me, everything happens for me for the purpose of self-realization. Everything that happens that I used to frame as negative or bad is actually what I need in the moment to continue this expansive process, to continue to learn about myself and continue to grow. So,
I'd like to share something with you if it's okay. Um, Actually, I'm going to put it on the screen. This is something that we used in our prayer circle the other day. It's written by Emmett Fox. You're familiar with Emmett Fox, right?
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
And this is, I think, entirely apropos of what you were just saying. So I wanted to share it on the screen here. This is from an essay he wrote in his book, one of his books of essays called Produced Without Rehearsal. It said, someone said that living your life is like playing a violin solo in public and learning to play the instrument as you go along. This is a true saying. It describes the experience very well, but no one should worry about that. We are in this world for exactly that purpose, to learn. While you are learning, you do not expect to produce a perfect work. When you can produce a perfect work, you are a master and no longer a student. On this plane, we are all students, and what matters is that each year we find the quality of our workmanship definitely better, proving that we are a step nearer to mastership. People are sometimes depressed because their lives do not present a simple, logical, harmonious unfoldment, because their histories seem to be full of inconsistencies, repetitions, dead ends, and yawning gaps. This, however, is only to be expected during the learning period. At the beginning of the school year, a child's exercise book is full of mistakes. At the end of the year, there are hardly any mistakes, which means that he is finished with that grade and is ready to go up higher. If the early weeks showed an excellent copybook, it would simply mean that I moved the page here. It would simply mean that the student was in the wrong grade. It is only on the stage, and then only in a good play, that the action unfolds logically, evenly, tidily, compactly to its conclusion. But then the actors in a play have no free will, for it has all been rehearsed many times. Your life has not been rehearsed. It is an adventure and a discovery and a training, and it is only the final goal or last state and not your present state that matters.
Wow. So I'm watching Solomon play with without it, I want to call it meddling right now. I don't instruct him how to play.
Right.
And I watched him from birth, and when he started playing with the little cars, about two and a half, and he would throw them, stick them in his mouth, roll them around, and I never instructed him the proper way to play with Hot Wheels. He became proficient at Hot Wheels. He knew which way was front. He knew how to make it go fast, to make it go slow, to crash it, to all this. And all I did that whole time was fish the Hot Wheels out from underneath the couch. That was my job. He now has, advanced into trains and trucks, and he's builds his own train track. And every once in a while he'll ask for help. And if he doesn't ask for help, I just watch and pay attention and admire. And in that paragraph by Emmett Fox, he said the same thing. It's play, it's learning, and you learn through experience. And what I didn't have most of my adult life was the capacity to experience, because I had separated myself from my emotional feeling body. And anything that I remember has an emotional feeling frequency to it, which adds to me. That's my experience. And since my recovery, I wish I could say the whole recovery, but it took me a while to figure this out. I'm feeling my way through life as I watch him feel his way through life. And this creativity and awe and surprise at what happens that he is experiencing is him developing his inner capacity, his inner knowingness that he's capable, that he's there's no shame, blame, there's no I did that wrong. Well, actually, that is starting to creep in. He'll talk about being wrong or being bad, and I talk to him through that. But it's this play. He simply gets to play and experience himself. I guide, make sure he doesn't hit his head or break a window, or and he's fine. He just does good. It's the emotional attachment that's not shamed or blamed.
Let's talk about that's a great insight about this idea of getting it wrong is starting to creep in. And
yeah,
let's talk a little bit about that, because I think that that's another part of our reality. I think I mentioned last week that our mutual friend Dan had recommended this book called Spirituality of Imperfection. And I'm wondering if that's just an inescapable part of the deal. And I think as I listen to you talk about your experience with your grandson, Solomon, on this, it occurs to me that one of the inescapable features of the human brain, particularly the neocortex, is the capacity to generate imaginary scenarios. And that the capacity to generate imaginary scenarios is the basis upon which we generate belief in perfection. So I'm sitting there, I'm playing, I'm putting my train together, and I'm just, without trying, I'm imagining the scenario, what comes next. And what I want, this goes back to desire, what I want to come next, and when it doesn't happen that way, there's going to inevitably be an emotion of frustration, disappointment, or something, because it didn't work out. And as a little kid, I'm not aware that I'm automatically generating imaginary scenarios about the near future. That's just happening automatically. And so I'm wondering, as his grandfather, how can you or any Donovanian grandparent deal with that? Because I don't know that you can prevent that imaginary scenario of what's going to come next and what do I want to come next. So the question is, can we help ourselves deal with disappointment as not a bad thing, as just part of the deal, and it's our opportunity to get up and try again? I don't know. I'm thinking out loud here.
yeah. It's he's okay with his mistakes.
Okay.
He'll pull a train, and the coupling will come off, and he simply goes back, reattaches, and moves on. Or they'll fall off the track. He'll simply go back, put them back on, and keep moving on. He doesn't see that as a failure or something wrong.
Okay.
He sees it as what happens, and then he's the one playing, and he doesn't see that as a mistake. And the imagination is what is being developed in his play. His capacity to imagine and learn. And I'm not a child psychologist, so I don't know the ins and outs of his developmental stage. He is learning to rely on his imagination, rely on that creative force. Another way to say it would be creative ability to simply play. And what we've lost is our connection to our ability to imagine. Neville Goddard says that God manifests in us through our imagination. So if our imagination, if we're emotionally restricted, if every time the train fell off the track, I would say, how come you did that? Why did you let it fall off? You're supposed to keep them on the track. That's when that crook would come in, and he would second guess himself. It's like, oh my, I didn't do it right. And if I would like to say he doesn't experience any of that, and I'm not perfect, and
it's not about you.
It's not about me, but my influence over him.
Right.
If I interject, get it right. I, as a adult child, attached my behavior to the value of who I was. And it's in this in these situations we're talking about where somebody judged what I was doing as not right. or the picture I drew, you don't make a purple, there's no purple cows. What are you doing? Cows are this color. It's simply expressing. And it's the interjection from the adult, dysfunctional need to be right, that gets attached into the energetically into the child's idea of himself. And he loses that connection to that creative place. And then he starts judging himself. That's in my estimation, that's what happened to me. And it is my intent that I don't pass that on. And it's not going to be perfect. He is going to be disappointed. He is going to be hurt. He is going to have stuff happen to him that he's going to have to deal with whenever. And it's going to be mitigated. So we'll see. And it's a work in progress.
So what I'm hearing you're saying in response to my question is that there is an experiment going on. Let me use your words there. There is an experiment in progress right now to determine how to support a young child in the inevitable disappointments that are going to come along and hurts, so that they don't get turned back on himself, but merely are experienced and allowed just to be what they are. And because we said a number of weeks ago, this has stuck with me a lot, that trauma is the result of stuffed, incompleted, or diverted emotion.
Yes.
And that, so in this case, if the emotion is of disappointment, rather than doing something that would tend to force that emotion back into a kid, we would want to just let it happen and support the kid and not judging there's something wrong in whatever happened that caused the disappointment.
Or frustration or anger. Right. So what I do with Solomon is mirror that. And I don't know what he's feeling. All I can do is so if he crinkles his face up and makes a mad look, I said, are you feeling frustrated? Are you feeling frustration? Are you mad? What's going on inside? I don't say that. I don't say what's going on inside. But I'll start saying feeling words, and then he'll attach to that feeling word, and like that's the experiment. He's going to figure that out for himself, and he's going to be able to rely on his connection to his body. It won't be demeaned, diminished, ridiculed. He did a thing. I picked him up Wednesday, I think, Tuesday from his other grandmother's house. And he wanted his mother. That's his first thing. He sees me coming. He goes, I want my mom. Oh, yeah, that's cool. I would like her to be here too. And when he was getting in the car, he said, I'm sad my mom didn't pick me up. I said, okay. And he started crying. And then he noticed something else that he was sad about. I'm sad that I have to leave Grammy, his grandmother. And he started crying again. And it to me, it was this faux cry, like he would try to cry because he has attached sadness to crying based on his observation of his mother, me, anybody around him. So he did this for about 2 hours, came up with things that said, I'm sad. And then he would just go into this cry that seemed, what do you call it when you're like fake? And I simply listened. And as this was going on, it dawned on me that he was trying on sadness. And then what he understands to be what you emote when you're sad, based on, I want to offer looking at his mom, because his mom's gone through some sadness over the last couple of years, that tears come, crying comes with sadness. So he did that for about 2 hours. And I was so grateful that if that would have happened to me younger and that would have been one of my children, I would have corrected them. I would have pointed out, that's not how you cry. You're trying to get something, and put all this onto his experiencing how to feel sad and then look sad That was his experiment. That was his learning about himself. And it was just remarkable. I was just so grateful that I could witness that for him without judging it or blaming it or shaming him or putting him down or telling him to be tough. He's a little boy. Boys don't cry. I've never said that to him. So yeah, it's the connection to the emotional feeling body that is lost in the childhood dysfunction, trauma.
Sounds like we need to have Solomon on to be our first guest on the podcast.
He could be the keynote speaker.
Right.
Yeah, come on and look like ask this question.
Exactly.
That'd be cool. That'd be cool.
Yeah. So again, go ahead.
We're sorting out desire.
Right.
And it's led to the conversation we're in, which is pertinent to desire. He is going to know what he wants, ask for it, and then learn to hear no, yes, no, maybe. One of the things I did not like, nor could I do with other people, was simply say no and have that be my answer. I had to explain it or give an excuse, or now in this reattachment, this accountability process, if somebody asks me to do something I really don't want to do, I can simply say no, I don't want to do that right now. And he's going to have that. In fact, he has that capacity right now, without being judged or blamed. Or I used to say to my kid, "You can't talk to me like that. I'm the dad. You can't say no to me." And it's like, so they're adults that struggled with people pleasing because they didn't have the ability to say no.
One of the things that I notice in our group work, and I may have mentioned this on a previous podcast, is when we're working with people to help them experience an emotion that they've been avoiding feeling, and then they experience it, and maybe it's the first time in their life that they've been able to experience it and allow it to complete itself. Mm-hmm. Without intervening, even though you watch people's faces and they're trying to stop it because it's so unpleasant, but they're willing to stick with it maybe a second longer than they were before. So as veterans of this process, no, the next question is, now that you've had this experience, what do you want? And what I notice is that wanting anything in the basket of emotions that is headed glad is almost the last thing people will go to. It's as if there's something wrong with happiness. And it's interesting when we get into conversations about these things, what people discover in themselves, like, oh, yeah, what? And if you ask people to just try on, I intend to be exuberant. Some people actually get it. They go, oh yeah. This is what I'm not letting myself have. This is what I want. And other people, sometimes they can't even say the word.
Right.
So again, it's as if we've trained our desires through repression, and we've basically made a decision that there's a whole range of feeling states that's just off limits.
Well, I want to offer in our using Solomon here, his joy at creating a train station and a train coming through in a car and a maybe a crash or two. He'll know what it feels like to be happy, that it's not something bad or spontaneous, or at ease with himself. All those things that they get taken away when we're chastised or spill the milk or knock something over or don't play with the toy the right way.
Or later on, don't get the A's and B's and
right.
Continue. Don't comb our hair correctly.
Right.
put the wrong socks on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's interesting as you were saying that, it occurred to me that one of the um, challenges I have in my own life, and this may be related to what we're talking about, is the capacity to complete a project.
Hmm.
And my life is littered with things that I started with great intentions and never finished. And I'm wondering if there's part of that's a reluctance to feel the happiness and satisfaction at completing a project. Because when I do complete a project that I have my heart set on doing, it feels great.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm going to just be with that for a while. But it's like this book I'm writing. I'm finding myself reluctant to finish it. It's like, oh, maybe that's the pattern.
As you mentioned that, my daughter had this articulating light that she wanted mounted with this, I would say, 2 foot high cat carved out of a stump. Um, and I just finished it today. Um, and I also, she wanted planter boxes, and they're done. It's like, it just dawned on me that, yeah, it's like there's this fulfillment in that. And I was trying to think of what would stop me before was, if I get to that completion place, then I'm open for judgment. Then I'm open for, oh, you put it in the wrong place. Oh, no, that's not what I wanted. That looks stupid. And it didn't even enter my mind in any of these projects that I'm doing. I was doing a project at the school also. I just simply did it, and I didn't have a second thought about people going to say I'm stupid, or people going to say that
Right.
doesn't look right, or you don't do that, or what the hell were you thinking? Um, so that's interesting. So
Another
it's
thing,
it's it's a validation of the work I'm doing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Another thing that people have brought up as we've discussed this question is that the emotions in the joy world often have a feeling of being out of control. Exuberance is not something that you control, and
Right.
so there's a fear of being out of control. I've watched people talk about I have to put a lid on my happiness, and so one of the things that people have suggested is that there's something about this need to control that makes those wild, exciting, happy emotions a danger, which then may be the reason some people do drugs to get that feeling, because then they can blame it on something else.
Well, again, watching my grandson just like go into a happy frenzy, and he'll run and make faces and wave his arms in the air and scream, and then stop and look. No shame, no blame. And if one of my children would have done that, I'd have told him, quit being silly.
Yep.
So it's the ridicule and humiliation that we receive from well-meaning parents to condition us to look proper in a world, so that we're not like ostracized or send ourselves to jail, which has actually created the opposite. We were all ostracizing ourselves, and there's a lot of people in jail or in some kind of isolation, self-imposed prison isolation place, because it's too dangerous to simply be happy, just simply be spontaneous, just like run through the garden naked. It's like somebody's gonna like brand us as some kind of weirdo nut person. Um,
Yeah.
and it's ingrained in childhood. Here's one thing that that came up about desire. The desire that gets created through trauma is things. It has to do with outside things. The desire that I feel now that motivates my intents and motivates my action and motivates where I spend my time comes from inside. And it's a completely different space. And there's several of my teachers that talk about feeling, desire being the rocket fuel of intent. It's the active ingredient of creativity. And the more feeling that I make an affirmation with, the sooner the affirmation appears in my life. So the desire is, if we trace it all the way back to, let's say, soul, my soul's desire is to do exactly what I'm doing right now, talking with you about some difficult stuff, some confusing stuff. And my bliss state, as I experience it right now in this moment, isn't what I thought it was going to be. And it is so much better than I could have imagined. And I'm going to continue this process, inward look, and connection to my real identity instead of something outside of myself.
I remember sitting in our men's group. I don't know if you were there or not, but it might have been after you moved to San Diego. But I remember having this experience of love, and what surprised me, I was gone through an accountability process, and what I don't remember the emotion that I got in touch with, and what I wanted was love and connection, compassion. And what surprised me when I had the experience is that there was no emotion attached to it. And I realized that this is what unconditionality feels like.
Yes.
The unconditionality surpasses or transcends emotions, because emotions are conditional experiences that come and go. And that was like, my mind was not prepared. I knew the words unconditional, but I didn't know the feeling state of unconditional had no feeling to it. And that was like, oh, this is what the gurus mean when they talk about bliss. This is the transcendence, which is the inclusion of all feeling.
And Christ spoke to it about peace beyond all understanding.
Yeah, exactly.
And it is beyond the emotional body feeling frequency, and it's a spaciousness.
Yeah.
Um,
You've been talking about that of late, the spaciousness.
Yeah.
And as Wilbur would say, it transcends, but it includes the human experience. It's not a turning away from it. It's not a denial of it. It's an inclusion. It's a rising above but including it.
Yes. Yeah.
Which, if you're willing to get metaphysical, that's the metaphysical interpretation of Jesus ascending bodily into heaven. It's the assertion that the body and heaven are one.
Yeah.
That these are not two separate experiences.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't mean to go mystical on everybody, but
Well,
there it is.
This is actually, anybody listening to this is in a mystical school, mystical tradition, and connection to our feeling body is the secret of the mystic schools anyway. It's not about getting out and seeing everything out here. It's connecting to the body, and in that process to the source energy in the body. That's spacious.
Yep.
It's beyond what I would consider an emotion that is just whelming and rich, and I don't have the words for tranquil, serene, bliss.
Well, it's a peace that passes understanding, John.
Yeah, there you go.
Don't even bother.
Yeah. Well, and for all the people listening, what do you want? And whatever it is, it's enough. Want that and see where it leads you.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it could be building model airplanes. It could be doing artwork. It could be going down to the local coffee shop and having coffee with your friends and just kicking it. It could be taking a walk on the beach. What do you want right now?
Right.
In that spaciousness, there's a quality of life that we're trying to explain.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
In Stephen Mitchell's translation of the Tao Te Ching, in his introduction, he talks about the tradition of Lao Tzu, who was the putative author of the Tao, and he talks about how Lao Tzu, his reputation when he was alive was he would run around and say, the things that I know and understand can't be said in words, and then he was accused of being talkative beyond imagination.
Yeah. Then he wrote a whole book.
Right. And that's the human condition. There are things we can't say, but we have to try to say them anyway, because I am compelled as a human being to want to connect. And that desire that we talked about, ultimately is the desire for merging. It's the desire for union. It's a desire for the disappearing of secrets and barriers, and the joy of being part of everything.
And you may not know how to articulate it, and the desire's there.
Exactly.
So I've heard a lot of people say, and I've said it myself, throughout my life, at moments of my life where I've contemplated life, and I just thought, I want to make a difference. That's the desire we're talking about.
Yeah.
Whether it's hidden under mountains of childhood trauma or teenage trauma, 20s trauma, it never goes away. It's always there, always peeking out.
Well, I would assert we're born with it.
Yeah.
And somehow the universe wove it into this human experience. And so, well, that's a good,
like it or not, we're stuck with this
golly,
brilliance and magnificence and creative ability. Dang.
Golly, yeah, dang. Well, we've found something to talk about this hour, and it's time to wrap up. Any final thoughts that you'd like to leave with us?
I'm grateful to have made the decision to get into recovery, and I'm reaping the benefits with my children and my grandson and you and all the people in my life. That is beyond, I couldn't have asked for what I have right now. Making the decision for me was the pivotal point. I'm going to a meeting. I'm going to find out. I picked up a book, whatever it is. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. I want something different.
Thanks, John.
You're welcome.
And for anybody that would like to have that too for yourself, please stay tuned for the end credits of the blog here. And if you'd like to get in touch with us, you'd like to check out a Rusty Nail Club meeting, like to find out why we call it that, please stay tuned and get in touch with us, and we'll be happy to give you the information on how to join a meeting. And so, John, good to spend this first Friday in October with you.
Yes, thank you. You too. And it's October already. Oh my God, 2020.
So I look forward to doing this next time.
Okay. Thanks, Marty.
Thanks, John.